Hey everybody, and welcome to the Chit Chat. Today we're going to be talking about the top 5 games from Gencon 2017. Today is the Sunday before Gencon, and I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of great games coming out this year. You know, I've heard a lot of people not being quite as excited about this particular Gencon just due to there maybe not being that one game that everybody's going to have the Black Friday rush for. But I think that being said, there's a lot of great games out there. There's a lot of things that I'm excited to play and a lot of things that are coming out that I have already played that I'm excited to see come to the table for other people and start making their way out in the community. So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to go over 5 games. The top 5 games that I think are going to come out of Gen Con, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them, especially if I've played them, and I'll mention it if I haven't, and I'm just excited about them for other reasons. So we're going to start out with Indulgence. Indulgence is a 3 to 4 player game. It is a trick-taking game, so think hearts with better theming, with better art, not just a deck of cards. It takes about 40 to 60 minutes, and interestingly enough, it was remade by Restoration Games, and so they're a relatively new company, and I haven't played a lot of what they've done, but they've been bringing back a lot of games. So Indulgence is actually a re-implementation of Dragon Master, which was a Hasbro game back in the day, and even that was a remake of Coup d'etat. So if you're familiar with any of those games, I think you're going to like this particular game. Keep in mind that it does not use the same art as Dragon Master, and that has been a problem for some players. So in Indulgence, what you're basically doing is it's going to have a religious theme to a certain extent. So there are going to be 3 edicts on the table at a time, and the edicts are basically going to be the goal for that round. Don't take red tricks, take all the red tricks, things of that nature. So the first player is going to pick an edict that everybody's going to have to basically abide by, and they're going to pass it around the table. Anyone at the table can choose to, instead of following that edict, they can sin. Sinning in this game is basically like shooting the moon in most other trick-taking games. It'll give them one special power, though. It gives them the indulgence of the church, so basically some forgiveness, and that forgiveness allows them to win one round or one hand completely without doing anything else. In addition, in this game, you're going to be collecting money. So basically, money is your points. Anytime somebody follows the edict you've set, you get paid, or doesn't follow the edict you've set, you get paid, that is. And if somebody sins and successfully sins, all the other players pay them instead. So that is Indulgence. If you like trick-taking games, I think you should give it a shot. If you don't necessarily like trick-taking games, I think it's one that I would recommend for people new to that particular type. Trick-taking games are just familiar for me, and so that's the reason I've included it here. Number 4 on my list is actually going to be First Martians Adventures on the Red Planet. So this one, it's going to be a 1 to 4 player game. It's 60 to 90 minutes, and it's by designer Ignacy Trzewick. And it's printed here by Portal Games. So this is actually another re-implementation, at least to a certain extent, of Robinson Crusoe. Now, Robinson Crusoe was a pretty beloved cooperative game set basically on an island with several different scenarios. Now, the problem with Robinson Crusoe is it often ended up taking quite a bit of time. It's long-winded, it's a bit fiddly, and so recently they came out with a newer, streamlined version even of Robinson Crusoe. What this actually does is it takes that, it redoes the theme, and it puts it in outer space. In addition, I think it streamlines it further, and it adds some additional features. So there's actually an optional campaign that you can play, so you can actually have somewhat of a legacy-style game going in which your choices from Scenario 1, Scenario 2, Scenario 3 actually come in and they take part in the rest of the story. Now, I haven't played this one yet. It's one I'm just excited about, but I will say it bumped down to number 4 on my list because of some of the things that we're hearing from other early adopters. So many of the people who have already received this game are having a few issues. One, the rulebook is not translated well. This has been the case for a lot of Ignacy's games in the past, In fact, for Robinson Crusoe as well. I've been able to get through it and haven't felt that it was that bad, but it is a struggle for many players, and that's something that you need to know going in. In addition, issues have plagued early adopters on the app. So there's an app that basically manages all your characters. It helps with the theming and the story for this game, and I think it's actually a really cool feature. But so far, it's named all your characters a certain thing and wouldn't allow you to change that, and some other minor bugs. This is something I really expect to be fixed probably now, but if not, in the next few weeks. It's a minor problem and it's not going to hurt anything long term. So I wouldn't let that basically dissuade you from getting the game. Number 3 for me is going to be Lisboa. Lisboa was a Kickstarter-backed game, but I believe Gencon is going to be the first time it's mostly commercially available. And so Lisboa is a pretty heavy game. It's probably the heaviest game on my list. It's going to be a game for 2 to 4 players. It's going to take an hour to 2 hours, and to be honest, I would give it 2.5 to 3 for your first play. So I was a Kickstarter backer of this one. It's by one of my favorite designers, Vital Lacerda, and it's published by Eagle Gryphon Games. So if you're familiar with The Gallerist or Vinos, especially Vinos Deluxe, it's going to come in that large, organized box that Eagle Gryphon likes to use. And it's along the same weight, I would say, as The Gallerist, though it is a bit easier than Vinos. So Vinos, I would say, is going to take you 2.5 to 3 hours, even once you're experienced playing. But this game is gonna bump down to an hour and a half to 2. So it is set in, I believe, Vital's hometown, Lisboa. And the board itself is actually even on a map of the town of Lisbon. Thematically, what you're doing throughout the game is you are rebuilding the town after the Great Earthquake of 1755. And I find that to be a really interesting theme. All of his games have been kind of set in a very thematic world. When I play Vinos, I feel like I'm making wine. When I play Lisboa, I really feel like I'm rebuilding this town. Mechanically, it's a pretty crunchy game. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be having a lot of hand management here. You'll be playing cards to different areas in the table, in the board. You're going to be doing some area control out there. And it's unique, and it feels just really crunchy and strategic for me. For people who are fans of his other games, I think you're going to love this one. It's well done. The rulebook and everything is exceptional. Your player aids are a little bit, I would say, fearsome because they're 8 pages long. I find that I don't need them, really, and so I think that is a testament to the game and the way the rules are written. It scares me a little bit that they felt they needed to write that extensive of a player aid, but I haven't felt there was any problems to that, and so if you're already comfortable with games of this weight, I absolutely give it a recommend. Number 2 for me is Photosynthesis. For a game that I've not yet played, this is really, really high up on my list. So Photosynthesis is a 2 to 4 player game, 30 to 60 minutes, and it's by a designer I'm not really familiar with, Jean-Marc Hack, I believe, and it's published by Blue Orange Games. So part of the reason I'm recommending this is Blue Orange has been knocking it out of the park recently for me. If you're a fan of shorter games, and we often, here in Oklahoma, we have the Oklahoma board game community, and so having short, easy to access games is so crucial with getting people into the hobby, with moving new players into our group. So they've made Your Battle Sheep, they have made New York 1901, and all of these have been a hit for me. So not only does it have the publisher behind it that I am excited about, it looks really, really fascinating. Basically what you're doing is each of you plays a different species of tree. And so you'll have your own color, shape, size of tree in front of you. And there will be several versions. There will be small trees all the way up to older, mature trees on your board. In the middle of the table will be somewhat of a circular overall board that has a sun that rotates around the outside edge. As players, what you're doing is you're planting trees in the soil of the board with the more fertile or mature soil in the middle and the more arid soil on the outside. Now, the more fertile your soil is, the more points you're going to get for placing your trees and for growing them to maturity. However, sunlight affects how fast your trees grow, and trees will cast shadows. So trees on the outside of edge will cast a shadow to the inside, and when when a tree is in between you and the sun, it's going to cast shadows on you, and you're not going to grow as effectively. You're not going to spread as effectively. And so your strategy is basically to grow your own trees, getting as much sunlight as possible, while blocking other people's trees from getting sun. I think it's a beautiful game. All the trees are standees and would truly cast shade if you were to do so. It's easy to access. It's something I could play with my family, yet it looks like it has enough strategic bits, strategic placement to keep hardened or seasoned gamers engaged as well. Personally, I expect that this is going to be one of the biggest games of the con. I expect that it's going to have some longevity, and I feel like you're going to see this one on a lot of tables next year. So I fully recommend it, though I will give a grain of salt. I have not played this one. And last but not least, let's go to game number 1. For me, this game is hands down L5R, or Legend of the Five Rings. I'm an LCG player. I have been for a long time, and so I'm a very big proponent of this type game. The reason I'm a proponent of this type game is the replayability is insane. If you decide to get into the competitive scene, it's really easy to do. Almost everybody has a competitive meta or competitive scene within 30 minutes from them. It's also something you can almost build a community around. So you can rarely build a community around a game like even a Ticket to Ride, but games like this have so much replayability, so much deck building, that is what you can do. You can get a group of players together every week to play that game. So we'll go a little bit deeper into this. It's only going to be a 2-player game. It's a dueling style game. It's going to be 45 to 90 minutes long, and for an LCG, this is pretty long. I think it's going to edge out towards the 90 minutes for a lot of players, especially those who are not very familiar with the LCG format, and so that could be a negative. It's designed by Nate French and Eric Dahlman, as well as Brad Andrus. So Nate French is probably the most recognizable of the three, especially if you are in the LCG sphere, but all solid designers, and it's going to be published by Fantasy Flight Games, so it's going to get a lot of press and support. This is an IP they completely own. It's set thematically in its own magical world of Rokugan. And so basically what the theme is going to be on here, it's going to be set on differing samurai clans and the mystics behind them. So there is a lot of rich theme here. Since they own the IP, they've done a lot of backstory. This game used to be a CCG and is now an LCG, or a living card game, meaning that if you're to buy into this, everybody who buys into it is going to have the exact same cards. If you buy the packs later, you're going to have the exact same cards. And so while if you want to continue to buy monthly or bi-monthly packs, it's $12 every 2 or 3 months, but you have the exact same thing everybody else has. You're not dropping a bunch of money on random packs to get rares and things of that nature. It has multiple win conditions, and even these are very thematic. So in old samurai culture, you can win by being honored. You can win by being the most honorable clan on the battlefield. You can win by dishonoring the other clan, so having them do things that wouldn't be considered savory. And once they reach an honor level of 0, the game is over. You can also win by battle. So samurais are warlike. You'll have provinces on the table, you'll have troops on the table, and instead of just trying to damage each other, take 20 points of health away, etc., you're trying to destroy these holdings that they have. And so basically there are 4 areas that you go and you raid and you destroy, and then you can attack their homeland. I think this is really great. Especially, let's say if you're not an LCG player, it's got great theme, it's not terribly hard to learn, and it's something really good that you can play with a significant other, that you can play with a close friend, and that you can get a group around. If you are an LCG player, this looks like it's going to be one of the best supported by Fantasy Flight. It's going to have a lot of fan-driven content. It's one of the most open and polite groups of LCGs that I've ever met. And I have played this game. It's solid. I like it, and I can recommend it. So now that we've gotten through our top 5, I want to do a few honorable mentions. I probably won't do these in as much detail, but some of them are things that either I feel like I should point out a surprising thing about the game, or it just was really close to making the list. So the first thing we're going to talk about is Mountains of Madness. This is a 3 to 5 player game, 60 to 90 minutes, also by Rob Davio, and it's from Yellow. So a few things to note here. The cover is beautiful, beautiful. It is a Cthulhu-themed game, and it looks to be kind of heavy based on the cover and the time frame played. And so this is kind of my warning to players. Do not expect a heavy, crunchy game out of this. Think Yellow. What does Yellow make? They make King of Tokyo and silly games of this. Not that they make bad games, they make wonderful games, but this is not a heavy Cthulhu-themed game. This is a pretty lighthearted game. In fact, in some ways, I would call it a party game. So really, what comes in with Cthulhu here is madness. Throughout the game, you're going to be drawing madness cards. This is going to affect how you play the rest of the entire game. You could draw a madness card that says, oh, you have to face backwards to the board the whole time. And the only time that you can face around is to play. You can have only to have to say, Mother May I, before you do something. You can have to have somebody say, Simon Says, before you do something. So it's tricky. It's really tricky. Some of them get silly. You have to sit on your hands. You have to always be singing. You have to only speak when spoken to, things of that nature. But anyway, let's call it more of a party game, in my opinion. And so that's just my fair warning here. Another honorable mention here. I wanna call it the Deckscape games. So Deckscape has Fate of London and Test Time coming out here. Deckscape, they're escape room-based games. They use a deck of cards similar to Unlock, so if you're familiar with our channel, we've done a review on Unlock before. The issue I have with the Deckscape games is they're a little easy for me. I've never not successfully completed one, and sometimes I feel the puzzles are a bit rudimentary. However, they're great to play with families, they're great to play with non-gamers or people who are less familiar with the escape room genre, and saying that they're not my favorite in the escape room genre is not necessarily a bad thing. I love escape rooms, I love escape room games, and there's nothing wrong with them. So, check those out. Fate of London, Test of Time. I believe they're by 999 Games here, and so you'll probably see them at that booth. Let me see, what else do I have as an honorable mention? Let's talk about Startups. So Startups is from Oink Games. And this is going to play 3 to 7 players and be a max of about 20 minutes long. So if you're familiar with Oink Games, they've put out Insiders, which is basically a gamer's version of 20 Question, and Fake Artist in New York, in which you're trying to call out the person who is drawing a picture but has no idea what it is. They're both really quick. They come in a box size about this big, and so they can be stored anywhere. In fact, they can fit in my wife's purse or my pocket. So you can take them pretty much anywhere, and they play a large amount of people. Startups is going to be the set collection version of this. So there's going to be 6 companies that you're collecting pieces of or investing in. And throughout this, you're going to be collecting shares. I don't know much else about this. I know that I've never not liked an Oink game, or that it's at least never not been worth my time to give a shot. Let's move on to legendary Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This is the last in my honorable mentions. So it's a 1 to 5 game. It is 30 to 60 minutes, and it's published by Upper Deck. I am typically not an Upper Deck fan. Their components are not really something that I'm a big fan of, and many of their games just don't hit for me. But Legendary has always been a great game, especially the Marvel version, and all of the Legendary Encounter versions have had amazing mechanics, whether I liked the theme or not. The mechanics on Legendary Encounters Alien are excellent and the game is very fun. Just the theme of Alien, the movie, it doesn't really hit for me. So, why Buffy the Vampire Slayer? It's kind of a cult classic. My wife loves it. I went through and watched all of it with her recently when it was on Netflix. And so this is more of a personal recommendation for me, as the theme kind of works for me. I think it'll be fun to play with my wife. It uses artwork from the show, and the unique mechanic in this one is that players and different characters will become stronger or weaker depending on the time of day. And so it has a lightness and a darkness mechanic. And so that is something that I find interesting and I think should lend to this game's success. Alright, well, thank you for watching the video. I hope this has helped, whether you're about to head to Gencon, whether you're waiting on some of these games afterwards. Give them all a check, and if you liked our video, please like or subscribe by clicking the buttons below the video. And we'll be back next time with a new and special contest, and we hope to see you then. Alright, bye.